Hello and welcome to another Gene Key contemplation. I'm Sarah D. Flo, and today we're going to dive into Gene Key 41. The shadow is fantasy, the gift is anticipation, and the city, the highest level of expression of this Gene Key, is emanation. And this Gene Key is very unique because it is the one and only start codon, which is referred to as a start codon. And if you're new to the Gene Keys, every Gene Key belongs to a codon group, which is like a building block of different parts of our beings. And the start codon's responsibility is kind of like, as Richard Rudd says, the capital letter of a sentence. It represents a start, a beginning. And then there's, instructions to follow that. So this one is full of paradox, as all of life is a paradox. And this is my fourth attempt at starting this contemplation. There's been a number of different interruptions, which is interesting. The dilemma of this one, as Richard Rudd states, is the dilemma of planning. And the biggest teaching of this Gene Key is about letting go and surrender, which is one of my favorite topics. Letting go and surrender is how I ended up here living on a float home. If you've not seen any of my other contemplations, and you can literally look back in March, I had no idea that I was really going to be moving to a different province, living on the sea. Not a plan. It was not a plan to be here. And you can literally follow my journey from March. I traveled to Europe. It was kind of like a pilgrimage back to my roots, half Italian. I was in Italy. And anyways, I love this conversation of surrender, and I really love this Gene Key. And also at the same time, I've noticed myself having trouble speaking about it in my various start attempts at this one. So I have no idea where I'm going with this, but here we are. So the other thing I loved about this Gene Key, Richard Rudd speaks about in the audio, is the power of story and how this Gene Key ties to story. Because every story has a beginning and an end. And, all beginnings have within it the seed of the end. But the dilemma with a plan is, in the fantasy, the dilemma here is our suffering, in that we are attached to what our mind projects into the future about what that dream or what that fantasy is. And then usually, especially at the shadow level, especially if it's coming from the mind, it will never come true. And the reality of the human journey is that, we go through ups and downs in our life. And although we're sold the goal of our human journey is to find happiness, the pursuit of happiness, or we're fed these ideas that, you find the right partner and you'll live happily ever after, or, you build the business, or you climb to the top of the ladder and you have all the money in the world and you live happily ever after, or you get the fame and the fortune and you live happily ever after. When the reality is, it's not the real goal. Nothing external, no achievements, no material things is the goal. And yet at the shadow level, we have a plan, and then we again live outside of the present, trying to get to that future. And the biggest lesson of all of this is letting go of it all and being willing to be led and pulled. And there comes the gift of anticipation. It's like when you hear a story, part of the fun of the story is the anticipation of what's going to unfold. And if only we could surrender that depth in our own life and watch the unfolding of our story with that level of trust and surrender, I believe, and my experience so far has shown me that our life can surprise us and can actually create a story better than we could have ever thought with our mind. So yeah, at the shadow level, we're victims to the perfect plan. And then we suffer. The ancients called this the wheel of samsara. We're stuck in a wheel, in a loop of constantly trying to get the feeling. And this is the thing, at the anticipation level, it's like we can anticipate the energy behind our choices in our life. Like, are they feeding the fantasy, or are they feeding just expanding and climbing higher in frequency? And if we look at the root of, as Richard Rudd says, all of the fantasy, and we get to like, what is it that I really am wanting from this thing out there in the future? And I think what it is we're all looking for is, as Richard Rudd says in this audio, love, connection, and joy. And what if we surrender, there's like a natural unfolding in our life. Like, all stories are meant to be good stories. And that connection and love and joy will be given to us if we're surrendered and trust the process, even when things get a little tricksy and chaotic. And the story, there's a story, a prophecy that the gene keys and human design and other systems have been speaking about the times that we're currently living in right now. 2027 specifically being this kind of changing of the guards, the energetic themes that have been running our world are completely changing. They're completely opposite, and it has a lot to do with the death of planning. Like, we've been in these themes where plans could work. It was perceived that, you create a plan, a business plan, a plan for your life, and you could get those things accomplished. But as we get closer to 2027, the story or the prophecy is that, again, with these themes changing, these locks and keys changing, that planning is not going to work anymore. So becoming more adept at surrender is going to be key to this. And I just wanted to add that piece in because I really have felt that and have had visions about it so much of my life. And finding the gene keys has really helped me make sense of a lot of the things that I have intuited inside. And actually, in the Gene Keys book of this one, he speaks about, like, if this gene key is in your profile, you're likely here to, start something new. And also at the higher frequencies, at the gift level of anticipation, is that you are likely someone who is able to tune into sort of the future, because everything in this morphogenetic field, in this, as he speaks about, the morphogenetic field is our interconnection to the past, to the future, to the present. You can sort of tap into, like, where is our story going? Where is your individual story going? And where is this collective story going? And we have created a world based off of shadows. It's just, we've based off of this idea of what success is and this pursuit of happiness. And so those systems are all crumbling slowly but surely. And, if you have this gene key, you're likely here to build something new. And the programming partner of this one at the gift level is leadership. And so it's like being able to speak a new vision or a new dream, a dream that is holistic and that is truly about connection and joy and love versus material gain or achieving anything external. And emanation at the city, the highest level of this one, is I find really challenging to talk about, because it's emanation is, and he says himself, like, it's a word that can't really be described. Like, when you think of it, it's like something emanating out, and out of what? Out of some sort of source. So it's kind of like the Big Bang, but what started the Big Bang? And this gene key, again, called the city, is called the Ouroboros, which is, the serpent eating its own tail. Again, the seed of the end in the beginning, and how interlinked they are. And, we come into this world with nothing, and we will leave this world with nothing. And the difference is when we leave this world, the nothing will have a different feeling. It's just something he describes in the audio, and he sort of leaves the listener to sort of interpret what that's about. And I'm going to do the same thing, because I also find it so hard to speak to. So we'll finish with maybe putting your hands on your heart and just feeling into your own story. And whether you feel the fear of what's going on in the world out there, or maybe you're in a challenging part in your own journey, and then just feeling for a little glimmer of light, of love, allowing your frequency to raise. Ducks are coming in here in my float home, and the local dog is barking. It's a part of my story right now. I know that when I was in some dark and challenging times of my life, I really questioned, life was not turning out the way that I thought it would. And tapping into creativity, allowing myself to focus on whatever bits of light and joy, these ducks swimming in my frame, really was a big help. And so allowing yourself to contemplate on your story and trusting that the end will be beautiful, however many ups and downs come into your life. Share whatever you feel called to share in this one. If you have this gene key in your profile, let me know. I'd love to hear anything of your experience that you'd like to share. Again, I found this one really challenging to contemplate. I'll see you in the next video.